This is Wink Tracks the Tropics, powered by the Weather Authority.
When the tropics are active and timing is everything, the Weather Authority is keeping you prepared.
The latest update did come in from the National Hurricane Center. Helene moving north-northeast. Winds have increased up to 90 miles per hour.
Keeping you informed.
It's now 170 miles northwest of us, and as we had mentioned, this is a major Cat 4 hurricane. This is going to have major landfall implications.
Southwest Florida has seen its fair share of storms in the past few years.
We are leaving immediately after this because it is not safe. You're starting to see some of these debris, sticks flying up and out, and it's one of the reasons why Sanibel is evacuated. It clearly is not safe out here.
But our slice of paradise has bounced back in ways we'd never expected.
It's tough.
We had each other, and that's a good thing.
I wouldn't have made it without Marianne. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it.
Wink News has been there with you every step of the way. That won't change.
Yes, we avoid the worst part of the storm, but the wind field's growing and the pressures are deepening. We're going to feel more of that influence on the back end with the surge.
From forecast cones to safety tips, the Weather Authority team has you covered. You're watching Wink Tracks the Tropics. All right, thank you so much for joining us today on Wink Tracks the Tropics. Today is Tuesday, and I'll tell you what, it's been a busy day here at the Weather Authority. We have been actively tracking Hurricane Melissa, which just unfortunately just continues to strengthen over the past couple of hours. You know, when these systems get closer and closer to land, sometimes they weaken, but it's just unfortunately not the case with Melissa. Our friends in Jamaica are now starting to deal with some of the worst conditions as the storm is getting very close to moving onshore. There is a lot to get to today. Before we delve into all of it, I do want to pull up in our panel just to show you who's with us today. We have meteorologists Oceana, Lauren, and Zach. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I know it's been a busy morning for all of you. How you feeling?
You know, it's just awful to see this storm continuing to ravage through.
Yeah, absolutely is. We've got more information coming in, you know, minute by minute as the storm gets closer and closer to us. So let's go ahead and get right into the information here. We'll pop up the graphics and I'll show you the latest picture. This is called infrared satellite of Hurricane Melissa. You can clearly see where the eye of the storm is. The eye wall is the portion that surrounds the eye. That is where the worst of the worst conditions are, and that is exactly what's beginning to move onshore right now to the southwestern coastline of Jamaica. Here is the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. This advisory fresh off the press as of 11 a.m. Hurricane Melissa has sustained winds of 185 miles per hour. Those have increased throughout the morning. It is moving slightly faster at 9 miles per hour towards the north-northeast. We want that forward movement to continue to climb, right? The faster it moves, the faster it can get out of Jamaica. Unfortunately, it's still a relatively quite slow-moving system, so they're going to be having to deal with this for several hours throughout the day today. Now, the one thing I didn't mention, the pressure. Look at that, 892 millibars.
Wow.
That makes it the third strongest hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic Basin. It ties the infamous 1935 Labor Day hurricane in terms of that intensity. The only two that are stronger were Gilbert and Wilma. Now, you know, you guys can kind of chime on this right now, but in terms of making landfall with a pressure this low, I mean, could that be the strongest to make landfall?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was texting with Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt. He said he's currently working on a graphic for the landfalling pressures because, I mean, most notably, Wilma did not make landfall as an 882 millibar Category 5 hurricane. It was at 882 strength when it was actually, believe it or not, nearby to where Melissa is right now. It was in fact about 50 to 75 miles southwest when Wilma was near that pressure, but it was moving off towards the west before it eventually curved to the north and northeast and of course impacted Florida, specifically Collier County and south as a Category 3 hurricane back in 2005. So again, I think Matt's working on that graphic because I really don't know off the top of my head what the lowest landfalling hurricane's pressure was I can only go translate that. Maybe Gilbert could be close to
think it
that. I
was
mean, if
892.
Melissa has to be, probably has to be the strongest hurricane to make landfall now being at 892, knowing what Wilma was and not really knowing what
Right.
Gilbert was in 88. By the way, Gilbert did impact Jamaica as a Category 4 storm in 1988 as well. So Jamaica has unfortunately been the brunt of 2 of those top 3 storm names.
I did see on X, meteorologists are saying that this is going to be the strongest to make landfall. You know, again, we'll have to verify that for sure. But these are meteorologists in the local community and beyond saying that this will be the
I
strongest.
do wonder, though, I mean, Hurricane Michael, they upgraded it to Category 5 strength a year after, and by they, I mean the National Hurricane Center, upgraded it to Category 5 strength a year after landfall. Of course, a year after means it probably wasn't at Category 5, probably the pressure nowhere close to it, but that's the strongest hurricane I could recall making landfall, even though it wasn't tracked when it was actually making landfall. It was a year after that update, but still something to keep an eye on that we don't get many landfalling Category 5 hurricanes.
No, we absolutely don't. It just kind of goes to show this is at the the top of kind of the limits almost of how strong this thing can get, and unfortunately it's happening at the worst time. Now before I delve into more of those graphics and kind of explain the current situation, I do want to remind you this is an interactive platform. We encourage you to leave your comments and especially your questions in our comment section both on YouTube and Facebook as well. We'll be sure to address those for you. Let's go ahead and get back to the graphics now. I'll show you some of the latest information that we're kind of watching. Now I want to talk about where the worst of the wind is right now. Again, it's a hurricane, it's large, right? Tropical storm force winds from one side to the other extend 390 miles wide. The entire island of Jamaica is dealing with that. Now, the worst conditions are where we're seeing those hurricane force winds. Now, that, of course, a little bit smaller, from around 60 miles wide from one side to the other. But you can see that that eye wall is now making its way onshore. Southwestern portions of Jamaica are now experiencing some of those sustained hurricane force winds. Remember those wind gusts, those shorter bursts of wind, those are the real problems. That's where a lot of that devastation and destruction comes from. And remember, this is a mountainous region, right? So the higher you go in elevation, actually the higher the winds get. So unfortunately, this just kind of all goes to show how much of a worst case scenario that this is for our friends down in Jamaica. Now, I kind of want to show you how this storm's going to be evolving over the next several hours. Again, it's moving at around 9 miles per hour. We hope that speed picks up, but here's the thing. It's still slow enough to where some of those hurricane force winds, the sustained winds, are going to be slowly crawling across the country of Jamaica for a while. This is 3 p.m. today where you're still seeing most of those hurricane conditions still onshore. It won't be until probably later on this evening that those hurricane force conditions finally make their way back into the open ocean waters, and then at that point it's heading off towards eastern Cuba. Now, I want to go ahead and transition here and talk a little bit about some of the wind gusts. I'm going to go backwards here just for a second so I can show you where we are now. There we go. So as this begins to move onshore, what you're going to notice is those wind gusts continue to climb, even inland, all right? Again, the worst of those winds not just going to be down by the coast. As this storm continues to move onshore, surge becomes an even larger problem, especially on that southern coast. Again, although the wind's not as bad in Kingston, you still have that southerly flow that's going to continue to pull water onshore. That gets worse and worse as you head further west. So you have communities like Bull, Savannah, and specifically there, that Black River community and the surrounding communities as well, looking to get the brunt of this. But look at these wind gusts, well over 100 miles per hour, pushing 120, 130 as well. Even as this storm finally starts to make its way more so to the northern half of the island, the backside looks to be very strong as well, continuing to see those wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. And we're likely going to see those conditions continue into later on this afternoon. So that's what we have in terms of wind. I do want to show you the latest forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center as well. After it makes its way back offshore north of Jamaica, it is expected to stay as a very powerful major hurricane. It could actually retain at least Category 4 strength by the time it makes its way onshore again into eastern Cuba. By the time it passes over, still a powerful hurricane as it impacts the southeastern Bahamas. That'll be occurring as we head towards late Wednesday night, and then we'll continue to move that forward there a little bit later. But before we do that, I want to bring back in our panel just to kind of get your guys' thoughts. what you want to add to this, some things that kind of came to your mind that maybe we haven't discussed yet in terms of those impacts occurring right now.
Yeah, Josh, one thing I want to bring up specifically is that I can't recall a system that has remained so strong for so long. Usually we do have rapid intensification in the early onset of many systems, especially when the dynamics line up. Dynamics being very warm water temperatures. We had that, definitely checked that off the list in the Caribbean. Low wind shear, we definitely had that as well with no steering currents whatsoever. So that showed how limited the wind shear was. But usually these systems, when they rapidly intensified, they tend to weaken a day or so after. This system, I mean, it rapidly intensified 2 days ago where the pressure went from about 953 millibars to about 915. That's when the wind really increased from a category 2 to a category 4, then to a category 5. And it's been at that strength. The pressure has stayed low, if not gone even lower, over the last couple of days. And that's what is crazy, almost mind-boggling to me.
Really is.
That, you know, there's probably a conversation that needs to be had on, hey, does a lack of steering currents influence the amount of eyewall replacement cycles that storms could go through? Because this storm has not gone through many eyewall replacement cycles. I think the National Hurricane Center mentioned it was going through one earlier this morning. It may have gone through that eyewall replacement cycle. Josh and I were mentioning this when we were looking at the radar from Jamaica. It may have completed that eyewall replacement cycle, but did not weaken much, and that allowed it to strengthen further, which is why it went from 170 miles per hour to now a 185 mile per hour category 5 hurricane. But again, I think there's some questions there that maybe any of you guys could have some insight into as well. I just don't remember seeing a storm so strong for so long, with also not going through that many eyewall replacement cycles.
No, usually it tears it apart a little bit. It allows it to kind of just at least level off for a little bit. This has not leveled off at all. And I mean, it looks so textbook, so uniform looking, so symmetrical. I mean, look at it on satellite right now. I mean, that is just, I mean, it's a beast of a storm.
And it's looked like that for days.
Exactly. Like it's not like it had a moment where it's like, okay, it's losing its steam a little bit. It's just been constantly looking like this.
And I mentioned that I think at 5 a.m. this morning when I saw the update, I was looking and it looked like it was starting to go through an eyewall replacement cycle. And we'll start to get some more wobbles within this as we get land interaction. Again, mountainous terrain of 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet. Mountains are now on the eastern side of this system, which is why you're starting to see a little bit of less pinks, a little bit more maroons, a little bit drier air trying to train into the center of it. But nonetheless, I thought that if we got an eyewall replacement cycle, that it would take a while, possibly 2, 3, 4 hours, up until landfall that could lead to some minor weakening, because textbook, that's what traditionally happens when you have an eyewall replacement cycle. But this completed it so fast that it strengthened even more, and the pressure dropped, I think it was like 8, if not even 10 to 12 millibars since 5 a.m. this morning. So, just a little insight with watching it all day today and watching it with your coverage, guys, over the last couple of days. It's just astounding to see how long this has been so strong.
It is. It's definitely a historic storm, and like you guys had said, I was hoping that it was going to weaken a little bit with that eyewall replacement before it made landfall in Jamaica. And then at 9 a.m., that's when we saw it go below 900 millibars, I think. And then at 10, even lower. So that was exactly what we did not want to see. And exactly what you guys just said. It's horrific.
And I think we mentioned this earlier, but just to clarify, the lower the pressure, the stronger the storm. So when we're talking about that central pressure, those numbers, I mean, the lower it goes, the stronger that storm is becoming. So when we're talking about 892 millibars, that's really impressive for a hurricane.
Yeah, and especially when you have to think about it, normally the pressure is 1,013. All right, so this is like, what is that, 120 millibars less than what it normally is? That is just a huge difference. That drop in pressure is what causes those winds to be so strong and powerful. Now, I don't want to cut you guys off, but we have a lot of questions and comments coming in, so let's go ahead and get to those. I know we talked a little bit earlier that we were talking about this could be the strongest hurricane to make landfall. Our friend Casper chiming in there at 892 millibars and 185 miles per hour. He's saying that would tie the strongest landfall in the Atlantic with that Labor Day hurricane. So that's absolutely something that we're going to continue to look into. Nick chimed in. Thank you guys. Love the Weather Authority. Had a question. Is this something you guys are going to do every year, tracking the tropics? I'd sure like to say so.
Yeah,
We have
thanks,
fun
Nick.
doing it
We do.
because I don't think we have this much of a discussion by ourselves, even when we're all sitting there in the weather center at the same time. I think it's neat to have this opportunity to be able to just discuss things that we're thinking of on the top of our heads. A lot of things that I'm saying, I don't really prepare as much. I know what I'm
going to
doing
let you
from
guys
the
continue
hurricane.
talking just for a moment
it's
here
kinda
while
cool,
I
yeah.
change my IFB battery
go.
so I am able to hear you guys.
Okay, I was wondering what was going on
I'll
there.
keep talking while Josh is doing that. Like I was saying, everything that kind of comes to the top of our heads, you know, we're based on experience from past storm seasons, experience as meteorologists. It's just kind of cool to tap into that knowledge that we have from time to time just because of how rare it is, because like I said, I could sit around with Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt, Greg Rule, the rest of the entire team, and oftentimes we're not getting into this science and specifics of everything. So it is kind of cool to have this opportunity within the show. I'm glad Nick brought that up, and I know Lauren's having a blast with it as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the fact that when we go on TV, when we talk about the weather, the most we really have is about sometimes 3 minutes, 30 seconds, depending on what our producers are able to give us for the show, because of course we got to get to the news and everything. So the fact that we have 30 minutes to unscriptedly talk. See, it is unscripted.
All right, I'm back. I can hear you guys. This is great. I appreciate that. I do want to get to some more of those questions and comments.
You missed
Carrie,
an exhilarating conversation.
You
with
did.
Josh.
well, I
Welcome
heard
back.
most of it. My friends back here are really on top of the ball. Don't worry.
Okay.
Carrie wanted to ask a question. How will land survive this? I strongly believe many parts of the island will be more than gone. So she kind of raises an interesting question there, and you guys can kind of chime in and also maybe kind of factor in how large the wind field is, and perhaps maybe there are certain parts of the island that are going to be well worse off compared to other parts.
Yeah, go back to, I don't know if you have the graphic, I think you just showed it a second ago, of that hurricane force wind field.
Zach, guess what?
There we go.
I'm way ahead.
There we go. 60 miles wide. So again, you may see that the hurricane force wind field is 60 miles wide, and that the red shading is small. But the right side of the red shading, the extra force of the movement, even though the storm is not moving fast, you still have a physics component to the equation of the storm is moving northeast at 9 miles per hour. You then have the wind on the right side of the storm added to that additional movement, and that's where the corridor of the strongest winds will be. How will the land survive? That's the question. The land and the terrain will be just fine, but in terms of the trees, the buildings, it's going to feel like an EF4, if not an EF5 tornado is going in that area on the right side of those hurricane force winds. The right side of that red shading is where the most impactful winds will be, which is most likely going to be just east of Montego Bay, possibly definitely over the Black River area that we were mentioning, possibly west of Treasure Beach, which is near the corridor of the center of circulation as well. And it's going to be a confined corridor of the biggest damage, but it is going to coincide with where that eye wall is, where the storm is heading, as well as where the highest winds are at. And that traditionally will be on that right side of the eye wall. And I think we'll be seeing damage reports that look very similar to the damage from an EF4, EF5 tornado in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, in Mississippi, where almost every tree is down. In the trees that do limit or that are still there will probably have bark ripped off. Every little bit of the top of the palm trees may be broken off as well. So just keep that in mind. It's almost similar to when Irma made landfall to the south, or when we had Ian make landfall. There is a scar that does develop near where the actual eye wall moves on shore.
Hey, Josh, do we have access to those live cameras that we showed yesterday?
Yes, my friend is going to pull them up for you right here.
Look at that, right on cue. I just kind of was curious. I've been watching these throughout the morning, as our entire Weather Authority team has, and just kind of want to see those current situations.
The hard part, and I mentioned this in our morning meeting at 9:30, I don't mean to I feel like I'm taking the show right now, but I was just mentioning that a lot of these cameras are away from where this storm is making landfall. A lot of these cameras are near Kingston, which is far east, where they're only going to see tropical storm force winds, or the cameras are far off to the north, where Lucia, I think, might get some more impactful camera view later on today. But right now, most of these cameras don't look as daunting, besides the one in that top right corner where the flash flooding risk is definitely coming true there on that river. And you guys can weigh in as well. I didn't see any cameras that were near Black River or Treasure Beach. And so where the worst conditions are right now, unfortunately, we do not have a visual of.
Yeah, and we've talked about this as well. Like, I have friends with family in Kingston. That is the capital city. That is where a majority of the population lives. And just because they are seeing, they won't be seeing the Category 5 winds. They won't even be seeing hurricane force winds. We have talked about this. The surge is definitely a possibility. They have 9 to 13 feet forecasted. Yeah. I know one of the airports in Kingston is literally at sea level. So there's a lot to think about in terms of what's going to happen tomorrow and the next day, and getting people help. And I know there's a lot of preparations in place, but this is seriously just the beginning.
Yeah, and we always talk about, yes, it's good when it avoids these high population areas, but this is heading towards a more rural part of the country. At that point, the infrastructure is not quite what it needs to be, right? It just makes it a little bit more of an unfortunate situation. It's a little bit harder to get there, especially for disaster recovery and response. So I think that's something that we're all going to have to keep in mind as well.
And unfortunately, this is a part of the country, the western part is an area that a lot of individuals in the United States do mission trips at. It's a part of the country that a lot of people within local churches have gone to. We may even have United States citizens still there because of mission trips, because of what they do in that part of the country, because of how much poorer the western side of Jamaica is. And of course, the poorer communities are closer to the water. They're almost on the water. And this is something to always think about as well, is that even though it could be a country in the Caribbean, we are still very much intact with what goes on in Jamaica, whether we are individually there or not. Right. Our country is very much intact with what goes on in Jamaica. And as Oceana mentioned, has a direct connection with individuals in Kingston as well.
I also want to bring up the fact, I know yesterday if you tuned in, we talked about those weather watchers that we have there, Debbie and her husband, who are right now in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. And I did just talk to one of our reporters, Annalise, and she just got off the phone with them. She did a Zoom call. They still had the connection to do so. They're on the northern side of the island, like north central Jamaica. They are going to feel impacts, of course, but they're in good spirits. They've been sending her videos, so we'll make sure to air those throughout our newscasts later on in the afternoon and the evening shows to show you what they're seeing, and we hope to stay in touch with them through the duration of this storm. But we did hear from them this morning, actually moments ago before we started tracking the tropics, and Annalise did mention to me that, they're in good spirits. They're hunkered down. The hotel, they're at a resort, and it's a higher elevation, and they are just securely waiting for that storm.
Yeah, I wonder how that's going to look for them, because I know Josh and I think you heard me talk to them in the 5 a.m. hour, the 6 a.m. hour I think we had this morning, and they could be very close to that eastern eye wall. Yeah. So my thoughts are out for them and anyone in that area, because again, the worst looks to be heading towards that northern part of the Ocho Rios as well as Montego Bay area. I think in that 1 to 5 o'clock window, and you guys could correct me too, I think it's around that time that looks to be the worst conditions, unfortunately, for them.
Yeah, and I want to pull up, this is called a visible satellite view. It gives us a great idea of exactly what's going on, where that central portion of the storm is located right now. We talk a lot about that eye wall. That is moving onshore as we speak.
Josh, look at that. We talked about that a second ago. You could point that out. Black River right on that eastern side.
Right there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really bad case scenarios happening right now. Number one, obviously, just the strength of this storm. Number two, where it is making landfall. I know you guys mentioned earlier that the dirty side of the storm, that right side, is typically more powerful. Unfortunately, based on how this coastline is shaped, here's what's happening right now. You have the strongest winds in this Category 5 hurricane, that's the third strongest ever recorded in Atlantic history, is actually pooling water into that little alcove right now where that community of Black River is located. So not only do you have immense surge occurring right there, you also are kind of getting the worst of the winds just absolutely ravaging those communities. So again, that is certainly where the worst of the conditions are occurring right now. And I'll say something else just based on kind of the forward movement. This could absolutely be a wobble. Wobbles are important, though, when it's this close to the coastline. There's certainly a little bit more of a northerly component over the past, I'd say, 30 minutes to an hour or so versus that northeasterly component. So again, I think that's kind of playing into, the timing of the landfall is likely going to be pushed back a little bit.
I want to load something real quick up here just to help point what you just mentioned. So Black River, as you mentioned, is right at that top corner. And then he's mentioning the surge is pulling in here. And this surge is coming around that right side. And as this storm system continues to progress off towards the north, in fact, I'm going to stop this. that surge is going to come right into Black River, which is going to almost get stuck, and it's going to get stuck against that boundary right there where the landmass is against the water. So, you know, it's just an interesting point that Josh has pointed out and mentioned. I just wanted to visualize that for everyone watching real quick. That's where the water is getting pulled up. Kingston is back all the way to the east. And you know, thankfully, you know, Kingston being back on that right side of the screen, still going to have storm surge, but the most impactful storm surge will be against this terrain right here as that storm system. And again, Black River, it's not a huge city, but it is still a city right on the coast, and that storm surge pulling in that cove, you know, that's going to be really impactful for unfortunately that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach, thank you for that. I enjoyed the little arrows, definitely make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I saw you doing that, so I wanted to walk over to the
that.
computer and try and pop that up there just to help add the visualization to what you said and what's really going on.
This is very close to making landfall.
Well, it absolutely is.
That
And
put
while
it
I have
really in
that,
perspective.
Well, I have that visual up. We do have a few more questions and comments coming in. I want to address those. Eric mentioned he doesn't ever remember storm chasers that fly through having to cut it short because of the intensity.
that was
Now,
rare.
I've heard that happen a few times, but I'll tell you what, it is very rare, all right? These
Very
guys
rare.
are seasoned, these guys and girls are seasoned veterans up there in the sky. So if they have to abandon a mission because of just how
It's-
turbulent it is, that goes to show how powerful a
I
storm.
interviewed them in May, and they mentioned Milton. When Milton was at Category 5 strength in the Gulf last year, they did have to abandon a couple of those missions as well. So there is definitely that Category 5 strength is when they usually abandon it, but it is extremely rare, as you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric also mentioned, you know, what to expect for Cuba. Again, we'll just go back to that forecast cone again as we get to the tail end of this. Again, the worst of it right now, about to make its way onshore into Jamaica. It will stay there throughout much of this afternoon. It will eventually start to pull off that northern coastline as we head towards this evening. If you are wondering about Cuba, like our friend Eric is, then eastern Cuba will be in the path of this as we head towards late tonight, early tomorrow morning. And again, just because of how intense it is right now, and it's likely going to maintain most of its strength, perhaps not a Category 5 after it makes its way over those mountainous regions of Jamaica, but still a major, powerful Category 4 or even 3 hurricane will continue to have major impacts on Cuba. In addition, you have to think about the rainfall aspect, right? That's a huge part for them when it comes to those landslides. So there's a lot of different factors at play. So eastern Cuba, again, hunkering down because of this hurricane.
And same with Turks and Caicos, southeastern Bahamas.
Right.
I mean, they're you know, unfortunately going to be seeing impacts from this as well, given it will be weakening. But I mean, as you mentioned, even Cuba, that's still a major hurricane that is expected to make landfall there. Not Category 5 strength, but still Category 3 strength. That is a powerful storm. That will bring lots of damage, unfortunately. And then even as it goes towards Turks and Caicos, southeastern Bahamas, again, continuing to weaken as it does so, but regardless, just a beast of a storm really thrashing through the Caribbean.
Kind of a final point on my side of things. I think Josh and I have seen the movement of this storm become from what was northeasterly to more northerly to now almost northwesterly. And I want to say and bring up the point that I think it's because of the terrain. The more mountainous terrain of Jamaica is in the central and eastern part of the island. When storms are not moving fast, the storm physics can bounce off of the terrain a little bit. And when we review this later on today, we might be able to see this bouncing that is causing it to move closer and closer, almost west of Black River right now, and possibly having it moving due north towards Montego Bay. So it's just something to keep in mind that these systems are not extremely, they're pretty hard to track when they're slow moving because you can add the terrain component of the equation to cause these systems to bounce off of it before it finds an easier way to move over the landmass that is Jamaica.
And that was a phenomenon that we saw Hurricane Irma, I believe, right?
Yeah, I
As
saw
it
that
was-
when I was here as a meteorologist. It bounced off the northern coast, and then it finally turned to the north and headed towards the Keys and, of course, towards Collier County. But and that was still moving faster too, but still a fun note that we always see with some of these systems and the physics that goes on with hurricanes by themselves.
Lauren, Oceana, do you guys want to add some final thoughts?
Oceana, do you
Not really. I feel like we really exhausted that, but I think this is definitely going to be historic, as we know, for not only the people of Jamaica, but it's definitely going to bring big impacts to Cuba too. So that's another thing to think about as we go into tomorrow.
It's just amazing to see how this had, again, we said it yesterday, but went from a tropical storm on Saturday to a hurricane so quickly, and then that rapid intensification that never really stopped. Even this morning, I was kind of hoping to see it kind of level off a little bit with those wind speeds, with that pressure. We did not see that. We saw hurricane hunters flying through the system and finding, I mean, even reading the discussion from the National Hurricane Center was just really eerie, just saying, you know, this is your last chance to protect your life. Just very strong wording from them, and it's just, you know, you're hoping for the best for them. I mean, you saw how close that is to making landfall, so just really thinking about the people of Jamaica.
Right, absolutely. And again, you know, one thing that we did not mention, which I know many of us know at this point, this is not going to bring any impacts to the state of Florida or the rest of the United States. But unfortunately, we are witnessing not only a historic but worst case scenario situation unfolding for our friends in Jamaica. I encourage you to tune in today. Wink News at noon. Meteorologist Oceana Hayden will have more information on Melissa there, as well as complete team coverage throughout the rest of this afternoon into this evening. We will see you there. For now, thank you guys so much for tuning in today's edition of Wink Tracks the Tropics. We'll see you back here same time, same place tomorrow at 11 a.m.